Rishi Sunak is potentially faced with another by-election headache after Blackpool MP Scott Benton was embroiled in a lobbying scandal, allegedly. The Red Wall MP has been recommended for 35-day suspension by Parliament. A sting operation from The Times reportedly showed Benton offering to lobby ministers on behalf of the gambling industry and leak a confidential policy document for up to £4,000 a month. Well, recently, the Tories lost big majorities in Tamworth and Mid-Bedfordshire, and Benton's seat in Blackpool South was won by just a 3,700 vote majority. So good luck holding on to that one, Tories. But do the Conservatives need to rip the plaster off and get this show on the road? So tonight I'm asking, should we just have a general election now? Let me know your thoughts. Email gbviews@gbnews.com. You can tweet me at gbnews. While you're there, go and take part in our poll. I'll bring you the results very, very shortly. Well, to debate this, I'm now joined by Conservative MP Richard Graham and political commentator and former editor of the Sunday Mirror, Paul Connew. Both of you, thank you very, very much. Great to have you on the show. Richard, I will start with you. I mean, logic would say that we should just have a general election, but would that be a bit like a turkey voting for Christmas?
I don't think there's any logic that says we should have a general election, Patrick. In fact, I mean, general election is due by the end of January 2025, so we've got a long time to go. This government's got a lot to do, and we're getting on with doing it. When I go out and knock on doors, the last thing anyone says to me is, let's have some more uncertainty, let's have a general election tomorrow. So that's not on the cards, and it won't happen. Of course, there are challenges that all governments have to deal with, and the occasional by-election when someone gets the rules badly wrong is part of what governments have to deal with. But that's got nothing to do with having a general election. So no, I don't think the country wants it. I don't think the country needs it, and it's not going to happen. OK,
Paul, over to you now, just to respond to that.
I think the country deserves one, and the polls suggest the public actually want one. Although I'm not holding my breath for them getting it. Although I'm told that there are various advisors talking to Rishi Sunak, and some advising go early, spring one in the spring, but others saying go long, stick it out till October, November. I can't really see how you could justify going through to 2025, to January then, because I think the idea of an election campaign hitting across Christmas next year would actually be pushing it rather with the public patience.
I suppose one of the issues, Richard, is that there's been a few negative by-election results recently for the Conservatives, haven't there, to say the least? Some massive, massive turnovers and swings. If this is another one of them, is it just another nail in Rishi Sunak's coffin?
Yeah, well, governments traditionally, particularly when they're in their sort of fourth term, don't do very well in by-elections. We know that. That's happened to all parties over history. And so if there were a by-election, which is not yet decided or determined, but if there was, I'm sure it would be a tough one, no doubt about that. But that isn't really the point. A general election is a much bigger thing for the whole country. It affects all parts of the United Kingdom. And you don't charge into that just because you've had a couple, or rather more than a couple, of bad by-election results. That doesn't justify at all putting the country through a general election. Of course, it's absolutely understandable that the opposition spend their whole time calling for a general election. But the truth is, and I think this is where the media has an important role to play, is that the time has come for the country to ask Labour to do a little bit more than just calling for a general election, and actually ask them what their policies on difficult issues might be.
Well, I actually agree with you on that. And Paul, I was going to ask, is this actually be careful what you wish for the Labour Party? Because, I mean, he'd have to come up with a manifesto with some actual policies that might actually have to be costed. He might actually have to tell us what he thinks.
Well, some of my Labour contacts suggest that they should go. Labour would welcome going along with it because I think it's going to get worse for the Tories. But, I mean, Richard, I think, is putting a bit of a gloss on the recent pattern of by-election results. And Rishi Sunak must be contemplating our leading psephologist, Professor John Curtis's recent prediction that on the current patterns, the Tory party could end up with as little as 135 seats. He puts it at, they'd be lucky to get 200 in a by-election, which puts you in a general election, which puts you right back into the sort of Tony Blair landslide victory scale. It's fascinating. But frankly, the turmoil around the Tory party at the moment, if Armando Iannucci had written this as an episode of The Thick of It, you wouldn't believe it. It's beyond satire.
OK, all right, Richard, I do think that maybe you guys should welcome a general election purely because, for that same reason, Keir Starmer would then have to tell the public what he actually stands for, what he actually thinks, and that would give you something to pick apart, wouldn't it?
Well, look, I think, that is going to be the challenge for the Labour Party, is actually trying to work out what they do stand for. I mean, take what happened last week, for example. If you listen to the Shadow Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, you would have believed that the whole Tory party was on the point of implosion during the second reading of the Rwanda Safety Bill. In fact, not a single Tory MP voted against it, and Labour were, once again, humiliated by a significant vote in favour of a policy that is trying to address a major global issue, which is an increasing amount of migration from Africa and the Middle East. And at no stage during that debate, to be honest and objectively, did anyone hear what the Labour policy was. My guess is that actually, if this works, and I think there's a good chance that it may well do, if it does work, I wouldn't be at all surprised if Labour actually, later on, one day, if they ever become the government, would adopt the same policy and just carry it on quietly. In the same way that they criticised universal credit and have never yet said that actually they would keep it going, but they know that it has been the most successful welfare scheme in Western Europe, and it worked brilliantly during the pandemic. But again, these are all issues that need to be prized out. From my point of view, we are actually pretty united. The divisions have been wildly exaggerated, and we're going to get on with the job.
Paul, final word to you. Do you buy that?
I don't buy that. I think the divisions are very clear there, and I think, if anything at all, Rishi Sunak's only got a breathing space in the new year. I think the whole Rwanda debate is going to flare up again, and it's also going to get bogged down in the Lords too and legal challenges. I think the public are now wising up. No matter what their concerns are over migration, legal and illegal, the fact is that they're realizing that Rwanda is basically tokenism. It's never going to be a serious policy. It's all about trying to placate the hard right.
Labour have got to come up with something, though, Paul. This is the thing. There is that argument, but then, there is also the very reasonable argument, which is, Labour saying, we'll smash the gangs. Well, that's like, get Brexit done, isn't it? That's Brexit means Brexit. Smash the gangs. That's the kind of territory we're in here, isn't it? But look, Charles, we could talk about this all evening. I'm very, very grateful.
The only slogan at the moment is that Keir Starmer really needs. It's time for a change. I think that is the public mood, and that will be the deciding factor in selection.
Yeah, or the words together stronger, or one of those slogans that people come up with. Anyway, look, Charles, thank you very, very much. Really, really enjoyed this. Really informative stuff. I hope to speak to you both again very, very soon. Conservative MP Richard Graham there, political commentator, former editor at the Sunday Mirror, Paul Connew. Well, look, who do you agree with? OK, as Rishi Sunak faces another potential by-election, should we just have a general election now? Chris on Twitter says no, because Labour would win, and it will be 4 years of chaos. I hate to break it to you, Chris, it could be 5. But there we go. The Tories need to get rid of Sunak, replace him with Boris or Nigel, and only then would they win an election. Darren on Twitter says the vast majority of the electorate vote either Tory or Labour, yeah. But if a general election were to be held tomorrow, it would be hard to differentiate between the two parties. It's a cracking point, that, Darren. Absolutely cracking point. All the parties are the same. Maybe not all, but anyway, Sean on Twitter says, instead of endless by-elections or another Tory leadership contest, let's just bring the election forward and do it now. We need change. I genuinely can see all sides of this. I normally like to have quite strong views, but I really can see it in the round on this one. Your verdict is in, though. Here we go. 60% of you agree that we should just have a general election. 40% of you say that we should not. So relatively split there, but thank you very much for everyone who's taken part.